If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel, and we have battle reports, boarding actions, and list videos every week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. This is an overview for a competitive list for the Grey Knights Teleport Strike Force Detachment. I will feature this list in an upcoming battle report, then make some tweaks and changes depending on how it performs. It is an infantry heavy list with a few anti-tank threats in the list as well. We will go through the Army and Detachment rule, Enhancements and Stratagems for the Teleport Strike Force, then a breakdown of each unit and how the detachment benefits the list. I will include a rough game plan for the list along with some final thoughts. Now let's go through the Grey Knights Army rule and the detachment rule for the Teleport Strike Force. The Army rule is called Teleport Assault. If your Army faction is Grey Knights, at the end of your opponent's turn, you can select a number of Grey Knights units, excluding units that are in engagement range of one or more enemy units. The maximum number of units you can select depends on the battle size. Combat Patrol 1, Incursion 2, Strike Force 3, Onslaught 4. Once you've made your selections, remove those units from the battlefield. In the reinforcement step of your next movement phase, set each one of those units up anywhere in the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally away from all enemy models. Any units that are not on the battlefield at the end of the battle count as destroyed. So this is pretty much an army-wide uppy-downy. Then we have the Teleport Strike Force Detachment rule, Teleport Shunt. Each time a Grey Knights unit with the Deep Strike ability advances, do not make an advance roll. Instead, until the end of the phase, add 6 to that unit's movement characteristic, and that unit can fly. So it's pretty much auto advance 6, and you can fly when you do it. And this is the Grey Knights list. I've named this one Knights of Titan 2.0. It's 2,000 points. Our Warlord is Kaldor Draigo. We have 2 characters in the list as well, a Brotherhood Librarian with the Sigil of Exigence, and then another Librarian without any enhancements. Our battle line, we have a big unit of 10 Terminators with 2 side cannons, the Banner, and the Narthacum or Narthacum. I'm terrible with that, but the healing thing. Then we have a 5-man Terminator squad with 1 side cannon, the Ancient Banner, and the Res thingy. We have 2 units of strike squads, both with 1 side cannon and a close combat weapon. The rest of them have the Nemesis Force weapons. For our other data sheets, we have 2 Nemesis Dreadknights. Both of them have the Demon Great Hammers with a heavy side cannon and a heavy incinerator equipped. Our final unit is a 5-man Paladin squad. We have the Paladin Ancient with a Banner and 2 incinerators in that unit. Then for our allied unit, we have the Callidus Assassin. Now we will go through the only enhancement that we have in the list and the 6 stratagems for the Teleport Strike Force. The enhancement that we have on one of the Librarians is the Sigil of Exigence. Once per battle in your opponent's shooting phase, when the bearer's unit is selected as a target of a ranged attack, you can remove the bearer's unit from the battlefield, and then set it back up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches horizontally away from all enemy models. If the bearer is no longer an eligible target, your opponent can select new targets for any attacks that had targeted that bearer's unit. Now on to these 6 stratagems. I won't go through these word for word, just a rough breakdown of what they do and how they help our army. The first one is Death from the War for 1 CP. In your movement phase, you can select 1 unit that has arrived from Deep Strike or use that Teleport Assault ability. That unit will then have the Assault ability and then +1 to the hit roll for the rest of the turn. So not the phase, the turn. That one can be quite powerful. The next is Haloed in Soulfire for 2 CP. In your movement phase, you can give 1 unit the Lone Op within 18 inches ability. It used to be 12, but it is changed to 18 in the June 2024 data slate. Then the detachment defining stratagem Mist of Deimos for 1 CP. In your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit ends a normal advanced fallback move within 9 inches of one of their Grey Knights units, we can then either do a normal move of 6 inches, or if that unit has the Deep Strike ability, you can pick it up and put it in strategic reserves. You cannot select a unit that is within engagement range of 1 or more units though. Prognosticated Arrival, and this one you can use to steal objectives and do some funky things with. So this is in your movement phase, 1 Grey Knight Psyker unit with the Deep Strike or Teleport Assault ability. You can Deep Strike within 3 inches away from all enemy models. You can no longer charge, but you can still shoot, and like I said, you can use this for all kind of shenanigans. Next is Radiant Strike for 2 CP. It is quite expensive and situational. You kind of need a big unit with a lot of attacks. It's in the fight phase until the end of the phase. Melee weapons equipped by models in that unit with the psychic ability also have the devastating wounds ability. So that's all of our Nemesis Force weapons. And last, and used a lot throughout the game, is True Silver Armor for 1 CP. And this is the Grey Knight's Armor of Content. So until the end of the phase, each time attack targets your unit, worsen the armor penetration of that attack by 1. And that is all the stratagems. On to the unit breakdown of the list. We'll start the unit breakdown with Kaldor Draigo and the 10 Terminators. This is our Warlord unit as well as the most dangerous unit in the list. Draigo's 6 attacks at Strength 8, AP 4, Damage 3, along with the potential 40 attacks from the Terminators at Strength 6, AP 2, Damage 2. This unit is a good target for the Death from the Warp stratagem. For 1 CP, the effects last until the end of the turn. We can ignore that assault ability, choose not to advance, and then charge to have the Terminators hitting on 2s instead of 3s. The Terminators have an ability, Hammer Hand, that will give the unit lethal hits if the unit makes a charge. Another good stratagem for this unit is Radiant Strike. It is a hefty 2 CP, but with this many attacks, it would be the best unit in the list to convert the melee attacks into devastating wounds. Kaldor Draigo adds a lot to this unit as well. He hits much harder in melee than the Terminator's Nemesis Force weapons, and he has 2 abilities that really help this unit out. Untouchable Purity to give the unit a 4 Feel No Pain to mortal wounds. 1 with the Warp for a once per game add 3 to the charge roll if this unit was set up using Deep Strike this turn. It is only a once per game ability, but making 1 charge per game much more reliable can be game changing when we really need that charge to succeed. Having protection from mortal wounds on this big expensive unit is a must, so it really helps with him adding that 4 Feel No Pain to mortal wounds. Like every unit, True Silver Armor is an option. This unit will have a lot less one-shot the whole unit threats. Mist of Deimos might be better used on a unit we might lose if we do not use Mist of Deimos on it. So if the opponent has this unit lined up and then maybe one of our Librarian Terminator units lined up for shots, we might want to use Mist of Deimos on that Librarian unit, True Silver on this unit, and hopefully we can tank all that damage. Then we have our Brotherhood Librarian with the Sigil of Exigence joined to a Paladin squad. This is probably my favorite unit in the list. It gives me a lot of utility with many different options. The Librarian has the Sigil of Exigence enhancement, giving me the option to redeploy the unit once per game when it is targeted by a range attack. The Paladin squad has the Inner Fortitude ability to give the unit -1 to the wound roll if the incoming attack is higher strength than the Paladin's toughness of 5. Then we add the option of True Silver Armor and Mist of Deimos to add even more survivability to the unit. A great target for Prognosticated Arrival for 1 CP to gain line of sight, do a secondary or steal objective. Since the following turn if they are targeted by a ranged attack, or if the enemy moves within 9 inches of this unit, we can redeploy the unit. The Paladins hit on a 2+ with ranged and melee, making Death from the Warp for the +1 to hit and assault not the best use of CP, unless we really need the assault ability on our ranged weapons to gain some potential points. We do have the option to use Radiant Strike for 2 CP to gain devastating wounds on our melee weapons. Hitting on 2+ does give us quite a bit of translated hits to hunt for those 6s on the wound roll. Hitting on a 2+ does give us quite a bit of translated hits to hunt for those 6s in the wound roll for those devastating wounds. I would rather it on Draigo's larger unit if I have the option though. This unit is a nice sweet spot of being both hard to kill and a threat the enemy has to worry about. The Grey Knight's redeploy army rule making it very hard to ignore certain units all game. It's hard to ignore units if they can just keep on teleporting down in front of you with the Prognosticated Arrival or just within 9 inches. It's pretty hard to ignore them. The Librarian also adds a lot of mortal wounds damage output with the Vortex of Doom ability. In your shooting phase, you can select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to the Psyker, roll 1d6. On a 1, this Psyker's unit suffers d6 mortal wounds, which luckily these are psychic attacks, and the Sanctic Hood ability the Librarian gives the unit will give us a 4-up Feel No Pain against those psychic wounds if we roll a 1. If we roll a 2 or a 5, the enemy unit suffers 2d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, that enemy suffers 2d6 mortal wounds. So the potential for mortal wounds is a lot with these Librarians, but they can be swingy. The next unit is our Brotherhood Librarian with Oath the Enhancement joined to 5 Terminators. This unit will be able to do some decent damage with lethal hits on the charge. The Librarian throwing out mortal wounds as well will help the ranged damage. Unlike Paladins, they do not have the -1 to the wound roll to help their survivability, making them less of an aggressive placement unit. We do not want to put these somewhere out in the open without any cover to be shot at. They will go down. Still a good unit for stealing objectives off the opponent though. The Librarian will give the unit a 4-up Feel No Pain ability against psychic attacks. Most ranged abilities are psychic damage, so we will get quite a bit of 4-up Feel No Pains against those particular abilities. We have a banner in the unit for extra OC for holding objectives, and that Narthakium or Narthakium or Nartha, whatever it is, you guys will let me know. Throw it in the comments. Sometimes I'm pretty bad at pronouncing stuff if you've not noticed. To bring back 1 model in each of our command phases. Next up is our 2 Dreadknights. These 2 Dreadknights are the only real anti-tank threat in the list. Draigo's unit can do it, but we want to use Draigo for the deep strike threat as well as hold high danger objectives such as the center objective. They can advance, shoot, and charge. Combined with the teleport shunt detachment rule, we can move these Dreadknights a huge 14 inches while still being able to shoot and charge. We can use True Silver Armor plus Mist of Deimos to add to these Dreadknights' survivability. We do have a Heavy Incinerator with 2d6 torrent shots, Strength 6, AP 1, Damage 1 ignoring cover, and a Heavy Side Cannon with 6 shots, Strength 10, AP 2, Damage 3 ignoring cover, both being psychic damage on each Dreadknight. The Great Hammer only has 5 attacks each, so using Radiant Strike for 2 CP to get those devastating wounds on 6s is probably not going to translate to many devastating wounds, if any at all. We do have to be careful when deciding when to use these 2 units to pressure our opponent. They do have a 4-up invulnerable save to help keep them alive. The toughness of 8 does make them easier to wound with the lower strength anti-tank weapons such as Melta weapons. They will not be on the table long if they get focus fire, even with that 4-up invulnerable. I do want to try the Grandmaster Dreadknights in a list sometime, since they are more reliable into monsters and vehicles, but not as fast with the advanced shoot and charge. Having the deep strike ability allows us the option to start these in reserves if we want to, or have them on the table to have that early game advanced shoot and charge threat. Last for the Grey Knights, 2 5-man strike squad units. These 2 units will be used to sticky objectives in our command phase with the Sanctifying Ritual ability. They are also great for doing secondary actions since they do not need to stand on objectives all game. They can sticky objectives and then go on to get us some points. Not a big damage dealer with only 1 side cannon in the unit and 3 attacks per model with the Nemesis Force weapons. No invulnerable save, but with a 2-up save they are hard to shift, especially if we use True Silver Armor to make them even harder to shift. Also the only units in the list with a native 2 OC. We can use Prognosticated Arrival for 1 CP to deep strike within 3 inches of an enemy unit to steal objectives from our opponent. And that's the last of the Grey Knights. On to our Assassin. Next up is the Callidus Assassin. I might play around with the Callidus Assassin instead, but for now I have the Callidus Assassin in this list. Pariah Nexus has a lot of the complete at the end of the opponent's turn secondaries. A lone op model with the ability to redeploy every battle round is very helpful for this list. Yes, the rest of our army can do that, but this is a lone op model and a lot smaller. You can kind of fit her in some different places that you can't fit some of these big Terminator units into. We can also use her to negate enemy stratagems to help drain enemy CP by dropping her within 12 inches of a target, causing all stratagems used within 12 inches of that Callidus Assassin to cost an extra CP. Can be very powerful when the enemy only has 1 CP. Even if the enemy has 0 CP and they plan on using a Rites of Battle, you can still use her to stop that from happening. We do have to be careful when placing her on the board. She can be very important to our secondary scoring, but usually later on in the game. We do not want to get her killed early on in the game. The game plan for this list, it will vary quite a bit since you can teleport all around the board, but the game plan for the most part is points. We do not have the anti-tank or raw damage in this list to stack check our opponents. We will have to play smart, gaining as many points as we can. The Teleport Assault Army rule allows us to bounce around the board doing secondary actions quite easily. I want to try to sticky as many objectives with the 2 Strike Squad units, giving me more unit options for scoring or putting pressure on the enemy. This is also a good list for completing secret missions, such as get our Warlord on the enemy home objective by the end of the game. Prognosticated arrival on our big Kaldor Draigo unit will make that somewhat easier. On to the final thoughts. This is a new army to me still, also an elite army, something I am used to. Playing them more on the channel and practice games will get these up to where I like them to be, not quite Custodian's level of skill, but still enough to make some competitive or fun lists for the Grey Knights. I may switch the Dreadknights for more infantry, or possibly change them to Grandmaster Dreadknights for better anti-tank. And I might play with the Callidus Assassin as well. I hope the Codex adds a bit more anti-tank or damage options to the army, but the army rule is so strong the army needs to be balanced around it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe for weekly battle reports, boarding actions, and other Warhammer 40K content. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.